Oh, there it goes. The stream is live. Fantastic. Hey, everybody. Welcome. My name is Taylor Kirkwhite, and I'm here representing Redshift Sports. I'm so excited to spend this time with you, Meaghan, and spend this time with everyone that's going to be joining us to get a front row seat to the grand adventure of the spoiler alert, the winner of the Hellenic Mountain Race, Meaghan Hackinen. So thank you so much for joining us, Meaghan, and being willing to share your journey with us. In case you missed us last time, this is a continuation of our race recap series with Meaghan. So if you enjoyed today's recap, please go back and take a listen to her incredible adventure and podium at the Atlas Mountain Race in February. That's going to be on the Redshift Sports YouTube channel. If you're just getting to know Meaghan, I could go on and on about her mile-long race palmarès. But what I also think is so cool about Meaghan is that her ambition to race all three of the mountain races this year came about as sort of a birthday present, a 40th birthday present to herself. Hope it's okay if I blow up your spot there a little bit. As someone nearing my 40s as well, I'm just loving this modern day version of a midlife crisis. So Redshift Sports is so proud to support you, Meaghan, and in your amazing year of ultras. So without further ado, we would just love to hear anything that you want to share with us about the Hellenic Mountain Race.
Thanks for that great intro, Taylor. I'm really excited to be here. I'm going to share my screen and give you an awesome slideshow, I guess. At least I think it's awesome. Okay, let me make this big. Okay, can you see it?
Yep.
Cool. So welcome to my Hellenic Mountain Race recap. We're going to get to some questions too, so I'll jump right in. The Hellenic Mountain Race is an 878-kilometer race through the Pindus Mountains in Greece. It really lived up to its reputation as a wild and unforgettable ride. It's kind of known for having a ton of elevation. So in meters, that's almost 28,000. In feet, that's over 90,000 feet. So that works out to over 31 meters per kilometer, which is excessive. It's unsupported. Riders must travel on a network of unpaved roads, tarmac, ancient stone pathways, single track. And it is actually, there's quite a bit of pavement in there as well. But that doesn't make it any less steep. Riders start under the towering monasteries of Meteora, and they have 1 week to make it to the finishers party in the Venetian Porten of Nafpaktos and claim a spot in the general classification. A confession, as much as I love the mountains, I have a bit of an aversion to steep drops, narrow trails, and rock gardens. I consider myself more of a gravel adventure cyclist than like a genuine mountain biker. And given the relentless profile of this course, I feared I was in over my head at times. And my preparations were pretty extensive for this race. It included adapting my bike setup, changing my training, and cultivating mindset strategies, mostly patience, to match the terrain. And the result was that I had more fun than I expected to and genuinely relished the moment-to-moment adventure of moving through a beautiful and challenging landscape. So big thanks first to Nelson Trees, the media crew on the race who's committed to equal representation in men and women, and all the wonderful volunteers who made the experience really memorable. So we'll dig into my experience a bit. Part one, I started about a week before the race and I toured from Athens to Kalambaka. It was a bit under 400 kilometers. I'm pictured here with Jimmy from Vicious Cycles. He's a righteous dude. And he was lining up this year for his third go at the race. He hadn't made it to the finish line the first 2 times. So this year he was really keen to get his full set of stamps in his brevet card. I have spoiler alert, he made it to the finish and had a hero's welcome during the finishers party. So I was really excited to meet him and he offered to store my bike for me. So after I stopped by for a coffee, I rolled out of Athens and started making my way to Kalambaka. I really enjoy touring. It helps me kind of mellow out and, oops, sorry, I deleted a slide. It helps me kind of mellow out and just find my footing in a new place, learn a bit about the resupply, learn a bit about the culture. I didn't realize what a night, I'm a night owl and the Greeks are night owls. So we made for a good pairing. And I ate dinner like after 10 p.m. every night. So that was one thing I didn't really know going into the race. I learned a bit about kind of just moving on the roadways, what the villages look like, that there's a lot of steep roads in them, finding water and resupply. I bivvied under the stars and just had a really nice experience. I covered, I guess, a bit under 100K a day touring to the finish on pavement and gravel roads. So when I got to Kalambaka, I checked into a hotel and I just kind of wanted to rest up, hang out with people. I had dinner with another Canadian, Tanner, and I just, caught up on work actually. I traveled with my laptop. So I hosted some events in the days before the race from my hotel room and sent some emails.
Can I jump in here? I had no idea that you did a tour to kind of prep in Greece before the event. So can you give us an idea if this was sort of like an opener or a warm up for you? How much time, like how many days did you spend touring? And then how many days did you spend resting and recovering and getting ready for the race in between?
Awesome question. I think you do have to add quite a bit more time for touring because you have to account for the travel and then for the recovery. So I arrived on Saturday morning, a week before the race. So I toured for kind of 3.5 days, and then I had about 3.5 days to chill and rest up. And I did take things pretty easy when I was touring, but there's a little part of me that always wants to push it on the climbs. So so I definitely needed to kind of rest up and make sure that, after you're sleeping outside, maybe you're not always getting as much sleep or you're sleeping in weird positions, just getting those good hotel room sleeps and a chance to wash my kit and everything like that. I'll also add, Taylor, because the way my screen is right now, I can't see you. So if you do have any questions, please kind of jump in because I can't.
Yeah, good to know. Thanks for letting me know. I won't hesitate to stop you, but I'm just so curious about kind of this concept. It sounds like such a good shakedown for you, not only getting the legs ready, but sort of like you're saying, culturally adapting to the sleep around like when food and resources are going to be available locally. Making sure that, your bike is built and you have everything dialed. I love that.
Yeah, it's a great chance to realize if you've forgotten anything.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a whirlwind jumping into an ultra. Everything needs to be dialed in. And you're also, in a new place, in a new culture, and that can be overwhelming. And that is exciting. But I think this is my way of kind of getting my toes wet. I toured to the start of the TCR in 2022 from Switzerland, as well as to the start of the North Cape 4000 in Italy, also from Switzerland in 2019. And those were both such positive experiences for me. So I'm glad I could do it again.
Yeah. It's just kind of a cool reminder of how different of a world you're living in as an ultra athlete compared to, I don't know, someone with like a crit racing background like me, where the event is 1 hour and it all comes down to like really precise and scientific fitness preparation. For an event like this, your comfort culturally and your dialing in of your setup and knowing where where and how it's going to feel to sleep in a certain climate is so much more important potentially than fine-tuning the engine days before the event. So that's really cool perspective.
Yeah, fully. I'll jump into my next slide. Here are a few slides from Kalambaka and Meteora. This is my office, the balcony of my hotel room. And you can see it's just an incredible kind of unbelievable place. Meteora has been used as a finish line in several editions of the TCR, and I think you can really see why. It just feels very holy with these monasteries perched on these rock pillars, and it was a joy to hang out there for a few days.
That is absolutely unreal. I've never seen anything like that in my life.
You really just have to be there. Yeah. And now for the bike check. I feel like this is what y'all are here for. I raced the Hellenic mountain race, my new Salsa Cutthroat C-Force CO axis transmission. I had a 10 by 52 chainring in the back and a smaller 30-tooth, I had a 10 by 52 cassette in the back and a smaller 30-tooth chainring in the front. I usually use the 34. That's what I use for the Tour Divide, but I have swapped it out for really hilly events. So I used a 30 during Ozark Gravel Doom last year. And after chatting with some riders who had finished Hellenic, they recommended putting a 30 on. I think this was the right decision for me. I would have, I think I could have actually gone smaller because I did walk my bike up some of those climbs, or maybe practiced putting out higher power to just, bring up the strength of my legs for those longer pitches. I added a front suspension this year, and I used that for Atlas. I put it on at the last minute before Atlas and really struggled with getting used to it and some bag rub with that down tube bag. And I had plenty of time to get used to it for this race. My big change for this race was adding flat bars. And that was because it's such a elevation heavy profile. It's kind of up or down. So you wouldn't be using the drop bars very much. And the flat bars give you better bike handling. I am not the most technically proficient rider, so I kind of wanted to take everything I could to build that part of me. So I'm glad I put the flat bars on for this race. I opted for the same wheels and tires that I used for Atlas. So I use like bicycle WG44 carbon rims laced with the Sun Dynamo hub in the front for my lighting and charging, and Rene Hurst Fleecer Ridge tubeless tires, 29-inch by 2.2 inches, filled with Rene Hurst sealant. This is capable and fast tire, and it's good for the rougher terrain as well as the paved sections. To level up my comfort even more, I swapped out my seat post for the Redshift Sports Shock Stop Pro Race Suspension seat post to help me absorb those bumps and smooth out my ride. I had some undercarriage issues after Atlas, and I feel like the swapping out the seat post really helped improve the health and hygiene of my body and just kind of stop me from getting so beat up. I'm using a Tantalus heat molded reform saddle as well. For packs, I'm using Apidura's Backcountry Series packs. I'm also packing their super light and tiny 13-liter packable backpack that I could expand when I needed to do a bigger resupply, because even though it's only a 900-kilometer course, there are some pretty remote sections.
That is amazing and thorough. I see you're going to go into a little bit more depth here, but I just want to reflect back on our last conversation in February. It seemed like you were still really kind of growing your preferences and confidence in making gear selection. As someone who is like all in it for the suffering, it kind of seems like you're willing to just be thrown on any equipment and just jump in and do the hard work, no matter how you feel on the bike. So we're, just a little bit more curious to hear how that's evolving for you, your relationship to selecting gear, and if the changes that you made are going to stick with you through the next mountain race as well.
I can be a little lazy sometimes with gear selection. Sometimes there's things that I'm like, oh, I really want that. I'll see it on someone's bike and then order it online and really like make an effort to get a specific part. With the handlebars, I just asked my bike shop, like, what flat bars should I get? And they recommended these ones, and I put them on. And I'm like not fully sure they're the best ones for me, but I am going back to my drop bars for Silk Road. So I'll have time to kind of keep figuring that out if I swap these bars back on for a future race. I really, really value comfort. And this is something that I heard repeatedly from Justinas Levickas after he won the Tour Divide last year, that, you don't need to be in a state of discomfort all the time. You can be comfortable and still win races, right? I was in a lot of pain after Atlas Mountain Race, and some of that was to do with some, back issues that were caused by poor posture. So one of the other things I did to prepare for this race was start seeing a really dedicated physio and develop a relationship with her to kind of address these, things that have been occurring with my body over the past 40 years to ride pain-free and ride with more power in my legs. So that's been an important part of my preparation as well. In terms of what I'm going to keep for the next race and going forward, I am going back to drop bars for the Silk Road Mountain Race because the profile is a little bit flatter and more rolling. Of course, there's a lot of elevation and really big climbs, but I feel like it's a bit more like the Tour Divide in comparison to a mountain bike race. So I'm hoping that I'm going to be okay on the drop bars. I'm going to use the Redshift underbar grips to increase my hand comfort a bit. I had a little trouble getting comfortable hands on the flat bars, so I do look forward to using drops again. I think I'll keep my tire and wheel selection, definitely keep the dynamo for a race as long as Silk Road. One of the other new things I tried is that Apidura stem pack. I really like it. It's a bit more of a rectangle compared to a feed sack, so you can store stuff in it, reach in it a bit better. So, and I put, my battery packs in there as well as snacks. So that worked quite well. I'm going to add a front roll to carry my more robust sleep setup for Silk Road because it does get colder, so I won't be able to get by with my minimalist setup anymore. And I'll definitely keep the suspension seat post to help mellow out the terrain again. It is a longer race, so you do really want to, protect your lady parts or vital bits or whatever we want to call them. And there's a lot of washboard. There's a lot of washboard. So I think the seat post will really shine in that circumstance.
Yeah, awesome. And working in customer service, we get a lot of questions about combining bike packing bags with the shock stop seat post. So I see you've got the Apidura bag mounted here. Did you have any issues with the combination of the shock stop seat post and your bike packing bag?
Yeah, this worked pretty good for me, actually. I asked a friend who has, he works at a bike shop. So he's got like all of the different models of Apidura bags. And he kind of showed me his setups and which ones have worked the best. And I really wanted to put this bag on because it matches my other bags. And I found it worked quite well. There was some squeaky-ish noise once in a while, but I felt like the seat post compressed, the bags didn't get destroyed. There was no like inner thigh rubbing. That's something that I have to be careful for if I don't position the bag right. Like sometimes I can rub the back of my thighs, and I managed to keep it out of the way there. So I think this combination worked for me like really well. It was the Backcountry Series bag. So
awesome. Thanks. That's super helpful.
yeah.
I've got one more equipment question from one of our listeners here. Can I throw that at you? I have more slides. Okay. Someone is asking about shoe selection because it sounds like there was a fair bit of hike bike, both up and down. So wondering, did you do mountain bike? What kind of mountain bike or cross country shoes and cleats did you use?
I used the same ones I used for the Tour Divide, but kind of by accident. So they were Giro Rincons. The shoes I was using fell apart when I was training in Switzerland beforehand, and I like needed to get new bike shoes. Those shoes kind of get worn, and then they're just like, and your feet like fall through the hole.
Yes.
That's kind of what happened. And it was tricky. Switzerland, the exchange rate's really bad, and just kind of shopping in a foreign country and not knowing where, and there's lots of options there, but just not really knowing where to go and not wanting to spend all my time looking for these new shoes in the days leading up, to my trip. So I went with the same shoes I used for the Tour Divide that I actually had at home still. I bought them a little bit bigger so that they could fit my waterproof socks that I used. And I knew that they were capable for things like Coco Claims and the, CTC single track section. They worked quite well. They had like a moderate amount of grip. They were slippery on the rocky stone pathways, like the stairs, the old stairs leading up and down to the bridges, like definitely slippery. Really had to watch my step in those areas. I think most shoes would be a bit slippery, but maybe something with a more like sneaker rubber grip might do better. On most of it was fine. fine. And I did feel like my feet were comfortable. Like I didn't have any, heel rub or anything like that. Yeah, so I'm not sure if I'll use these for Silk Road because there's the 30K hike bike. So I've really got to be careful with my selection for that one.
Wow. All right. Well, you heard it here first, folks. Meaghan is open to a shoe sponsorship with someone who focuses in the ultra area.
100%.
All right. Awesome. That's all the equipment questions I'm seeing here so far.
I was bribed by Sturka Nutrition Products to do a kit grid for the media team. They wanted me to unpack everything on my bike at registration day. And I was like, and they're like, we'll give you a bunch of nutrition products. And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. So I pulled everything out and took some photos here. So you can kind of see everything I've got with me on my bike. There's I guess I wrote it down kind of what I've got here. I don't know. I've got a tiny sleeping pad and an SOL bivvy and no sleeping bag, you might notice. So my plan was just to wear my puffy jacket and my rain pants and kind of cozy up and seek shelters and, some hotels to stay in. I have a rain jacket from 7 Mesh, the Sky Pilot one that I used on the Tour Divide, as well as that awesome butterscotch vest. I left my favorite red Montbelt puffy jacket in a hotel room in Majorca, and I didn't get it back in time for the race. So I bought that kind of Merlot colored one from Decathlon 2 days before I left Switzerland. So it was fine, but it wasn't as light or as comfy as the one that I wanted to use. And it took up a bit more room, which was kind of annoying, but that's what you get for leaving things at random hotel rooms. I used a glove layering system from Descent. I think it's 113 or something, and that worked pretty well for me. A lot of the stuff I kind of had tested on the Tour Divide, like the Sky Pilot, the Atlas jersey. So that's kind of become, if it worked for me on the Divide, it'll probably work for me on these other events. And then registration day. So registration day was really low key for this race because it was the day before the start. At Atlas, it was kind of the afternoon of the start. And so there was a lot of pre-race jitters. I don't know, it felt a little uptight to me, or maybe that was just what I brought to it. This time it was kind of, beneath these giant rocks and everyone was hanging out and having fun. And we didn't have to be on our bikes for 16 hours or something. So it just had a nicer, to me, more mellow vibe, which was pretty appreciated. And then day one, we rolled out at 9 a.m., which is, in my opinion, the perfect time to start an ultra because you can get a good night's sleep beforehand. I think there was 190 riders, so a pretty good crowd. And I was feeling a bit nervous just because of the elevation profile and the terrain, but I kind of immediately started seeing my own success, which motivated me quite a bit. It starts out with some single track, and I positioned myself, I would say probably mid to backpack because I was worried about that. And as soon as we were off the single track, I started passing people, which just felt really good to kind of, be having these little micro conversations and moving up in the rankings. When I got to the top of the first big climb, it's kind of like a 1,400 meter climb right off the bat. I saw the media car and I was descending this rougher terrain and, looking at the media car being like, oh, cool. I've made it to the first place of importance and I'm all in one piece still. So that feels pretty good. So as I mentioned, we started out with some single track. The first day included a lot of slippery stone bridges that were beautiful, but just a bit of a hazard to navigate. And every stone bridge had a hike down to it and a hike back up from it. So I think that Nelson has a bit of a love affair with stone bridges, and he linked many of them together on this course. I did a lot of them at night, so I didn't get to see them very well, but they are really cool. There's a lot of climbing, and it started raining at night, which it wasn't cold, but it just kind of made things trickier. The surfaces were muddier. You're kind of like, okay, do I wear my rain jacket even though I'm sweating inside of it? Those kinds of decisions, and knowing that you're probably going to have to look for a shelter place to sleep that night or find a spot indoors. You can see there's riders in like every single one of these photos. So it was a pretty social first day for me. I wasn't on my own for very long. There's a section called forced jail or forced prison. I'm not exactly sure where it is, but I think I got to it at night and the GPS track doesn't exactly match the trail. So you're kind of second guessing yourself and bushwhacking a bit. And I was around that area with maybe 5 or 6 other people, and everyone's arguing over where the track is or where they should go. And temperaments are a little bit like hot. And somewhere in there, I lost the sleeping pad from my, from the back of my Apidura bag. I didn't have it tethered. It just got like whacked off. So it was really disappointing to realize later on when I went to go to bed that night that I was missing my sleeping pad. The good news is somebody picked it up, handed it to the media car, and Mel Webb used it as a butt cushion while she was on her laptop throughout the course of the race. And I did get it back, which was great.
Meaghan, did you get it back during the race so you were able to use it for sleeping other nights? No.
No. The mountain race series really prioritizes self-sufficiency and independence and not getting outdoor or outside help, right? So I think they could have returned it to me if they wanted to.
That makes sense. It would be kind of an issue of principle there. So you lost it on the first day, so you weren't able to have a sleeping pad for the entirety of the race. Is that right?
That's right. And I ended up sleeping outside 3 nights in one hotel. And I have raced without the sleeping pad before. When I was in my 30s, I didn't feel like I needed one. But it does reduce your comfort. And I struggle a bit from the cold. So especially not using a sleeping bag. And I ended up sleeping in little shelters or, the kind of areas outside of small chapels, and it's like you're sleeping on concrete or cement or something. So it is quite chilly. So I ended up laying out my rain gear underneath me to kind of help kind of keep my body warmth in, and that seemed to work okay. Not an ideal thing to lose. I'll definitely be more careful with it next time and tether it on. It's just a bit of a bulkier item, and I don't have a great place to put it. During the divide, I actually put it on my front fork. And that seemed to work quite well. So I guess a little bit more about the first day. I feel like I jumped right through the night part, but I rode until about 3 a.m. and my sleep strategy was to go until I was exhausted and then sleep. And I figured just kind of letting the rhythm of my body dictate what happened, not trying to push through the first night if my body wasn't having it. But if I was amped up and ready to go and I didn't want to sleep, I wasn't going to force myself to sleep either. The first day was pretty, like, we saw a lot. We went through, I think, an area called the Stone Forest, which I didn't see at all either. But from what people have told me, there's like big piles of stone that are some weird sort of geological formation. The route went and did a little out and back to an area called Vico's Gorge, which apparently is beautiful. I didn't see anything except the moon. And then there was this big meadow full of stones that was listed on the POI Ride with GPS as like no track here, but completely rideable. And only the first part of that was true. It was one of the most ridiculous parts of the race. There was a lot of them. And I don't say ridiculous in a bad way. I just say that, like, when else am I going to find myself in this situation of picking my way down a slope full of rocks and, and trying to figure out where I'm going at like 2 a.m. And there was another rider. So, I kind of see their light going one way and have to be like, I don't know if they're going the right way. Do I make my own decision here, or do I just hope that they're going the right way? And I really enjoyed it though, because my body felt fresh and I was having fun. And I think I'd been like adequately forewarned over how challenging this race was. So it didn't really come as a surprise to me that I was, wandering through a steep rock meadow at night or getting lost in forest prison. It just seemed like, stuff that was going to happen. I did sleep for 2 hours that first night, and I got up and got going again. And I got to see one of the stone bridges in the morning, which was awesome.
Man, what an adventure. You're totally right that if you were just planning like a recreational tour, you would not really find yourself in that same position. And, one of the questions that we have here is about route finding challenges, which, you've already mentioned a couple of stories, having to second guess yourself and use your best resources to make a good decision. And I just can't imagine how hard that would be on top of sleep deprivation, at 3 a.m. in a foreign place in the dark.
Yeah, I think it's hard enough when you're of a clear mind, but if there's anything else weighing on you, if you're worried about, mechanicals, or if you're tired or hungry or cold, those things just amplify the discomfort and make it harder and harder to make good decisions. And, I think the thing about decision making is sometimes we don't know the answer. Like, it's your best guess. And if you make a wrong decision, I think it's also important maybe to not beat yourself up about it, because you really are guessing and trying to interpret the facts. And, sometimes being right is being lucky. So yeah, I would just encourage people to not get upset with themselves when when it seems like you're making all the bad choices. It's like when you're at the grocery store aisle and you pick the wrong lineup and the person in front of you takes forever and you're like, oh my gosh, like, why? You're watching everybody else blow through. But yeah, I don't think that's like a personality fault on your part. So.
Right. So maybe you'll get to this as you progress, but it sounds like you got lucky enough and trusted your intuition enough not to have any major setbacks with route finding challenges. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I think the most difficulty I had was that first night in forest prison. There was a bit of like a ravine that had to kind of figure out what side of it I was going to be on. And once I figured that out, it was all right. So that wasn't that big of a deal. And I don't think I ever got off course for more than, maybe a couple 100 meters. And that was perhaps, when the route kind of parts slowly, or when two roads part slowly and you're on the wrong one and realizing that you're tracking the wrong direction, and just having to U-turn and zip back. So I usually keep my route pretty zoomed in. I have a Wahoo Element Roam, and all the beeping and chirping drives me bananas, but I keep it on during a race because I know that I need that extra help. But I do kind of want to like pull my hair out sometimes when it's chirping at me. So yeah, day 2, my model was kind of slow and steady. There was a pretty big hike-a-bike up to Smolika's, kind of not the top of the mountain, but a hiking trail on the mountain. And you can see another rider in that middle photo pushing their bike. So you hike your bike up. It was a bit rainy and wet still, not the best views, but kind of a cool place to be. There was other hikers wondering what on earth we were doing going over this trail with our bikes. And then there's a 7-kilometer mountain bike descent, which meant a 7-kilometer hike down. And I did try to ride parts of it, and just felt like it was a bit too difficult for me. So I ended up kind of power walking a lot of it. There's a great photo of me wiping out on a blue pipe that I don't have in this slideshow, but I'll be sure to post it on my Instagram soon, that Nils Langer took. And I think, wiping out, to me, it's always a reminder that when you're hurt a little bit, that you better like take it down a notch and try not to actually hurt yourself, right? So after I wiped out on the blue piping, I really took it carefully for the rest of the way to the first checkpoint in Mundi Smolika's mountain refuge. The problem with this race was the checkpoints were so cozy and comfortable, and the food was so yummy. You just like didn't want to leave. And I actually didn't plan on eating anything here. But Nelson's mom, you can see her in the background with the white hair, she was sitting down to a bowl of pasta, and like I couldn't not order some spaghetti bolognese when I was sitting across from somebody eating it. And I think that was a good decision. I've been living off of gels and candy, and the pasta went down really well. I also, disinfected my knee from wiping out on it and refilled my water, and just got to rest up a little bit. You can see it was 278 kilometers to get to the first checkpoint, but almost an Everest of elevation, which is just pretty ridiculous.
Wow.
I don't do so well in the cold and the rain. Like I grew up in the lower mainland of BC, so I should be like more accustomed to it. And I have great rain gear. It just makes me like a little bit grumpy. So after I left the checkpoint, I wasn't, I mean, okay, I guess I'm smiling here, but I just had a bit of a rougher day. And I'd say this was kind of one of my low points between CP2 and Metsovo, kind of due to finishing off this loop. This was one of the best views I had. Mostly it was just kind of riding through a cloud, and the surfaces were really muddy and slippery or rocky and chunky. And I just like wasn't in love with the riding that day. And I could feel myself getting a bit chilly, you know, even with my gloves on and my rain jacket and everything. For some reason I didn't put my rain pants on, which was stupid. So, you know, my like butt is soggy, just like not really feeling it. When I got closer to Metsovo, I bumped into two other riders. I guess they passed me. And it was really motivating to see a couple other people. And I definitely picked up my pace at that point. And I decided to get a hotel that second night in Metsovo just because I wasn't in a great mood. I was a bit wet. My socks were wet. I had two pairs and I'd gotten them both soaked. So I wanted to have a good night's sleep. And so I decided to stop for a hotel room that night. I got in at maybe like 8:30 p.m. and it seemed to take forever to like take care of the necessary items. So I washed my bike. I rode in to town a little bit, maybe like 200 meters from my hotel, to get food from a convenience store. I didn't want to wait for food at a restaurant, so I just grabbed some yogurt and fruit juice and bananas and 7-day croissants and brought them back to my hotel room. I needed to wash my shorts out. I decided to wash my socks, which I usually don't, but they were just really disgusting. And then I had to hang everything up to dry by the heater and plug everything into charge. So I slept for about 3.5 hours at the hotel room. It was really rejuvenating, but I felt like it took way longer to deal with all those little things than I wanted it to. And even though I think I did things efficiently, but yeah, it was, I don't know how long I was there for, but longer than I wanted to be. So the morning of day 3, I felt like this was really going into the wild. And I think day 3 was actually my favorite time, the part of the race that goes south from Metsovo. As I was riding out of town that morning, someone had given me a warning to be careful for the dogs leaving Metsovo. There's a pretty ripping paved descent. And, I was ripping down this descent at like 2 in the morning or something. I left pretty early. I saw a huge dog on the road and I was like, oh my gosh, like, do I try and outrun it? Do I stop? Like, I don't know what to do. I've never seen a dog this big. And it turned out to be a black bear, actually. And definitely not what you're expecting in not Kyrgyzstan, in Greece, but they are on the official Hellenic mountain race T-shirt, so I wasn't totally unprepared. And thankfully, unlike dogs, bears are scared of people, so it ran into the woods. But it was just kind of a wild way to start the day, and I felt like it was a bit symbolic of, you know, this section of the route really going into more rugged terrain, a little less reachable by vehicle. And this is a photo I took at the top of the first climb of the day. It's a pretty long grind up, and it was absolutely beautiful. And I think it's just kind of hilarious that this is like the photo I have from it. And once I started descending, I immediately, started to feel the chill. My hands were in gloves, and it just got like more and more beautiful. I think I was entering an area they call Little Kyrgyzstan. By they, I mean the race organization. I don't think people in Greece call it that. And you're just kind of in this vast open landscape. There's no cars, there's no people around. And it was so beautiful. I, had a little gratitude cry because I couldn't take any photos. I didn't want to take my gloves off and pull my phone out of my pocket. So I had to kind of remember it. And this was all at sunrise, which for me is a really transitional time. And well, I guess for everyone, it's a transitional time, but I feel like I'm more emotional during transitional times, the morning and the evening. So I was descending and crying and just being like really grateful that my legs were still holding up. And I was probably starting to maybe feel the impacts of sleep deprivation and getting the ultra weirdness going on, but really enjoying myself at the same time.
That's amazing. I definitely feel that like that photo in some ways really fits with the experience that you're sharing there. It almost looks like the veil is just thinner and you can really, absorb the the experience that you're putting yourself through all the highs and lows. I wanted to loop back to you had mentioned the fright of coming across the black bear, and then once you realized it was a black bear, having that sense of relief, because usually black bears are not chasing people down. But someone asks here, in your training or ultra racing, have you ever had issues with wildlife, dogs, or even, being chased or stalked by humans during one of your events?
My number one fear by far are dogs. And I feel like I've chosen events where there've been a lot of dogs. Last year I did 2 races in Arkansas. I was in Morocco in the spring and now Greece. So I guess it's my fault for picking places that are known for having aggressive dogs. When I was touring to the start, I ran into a few packs of like 6 to 8 big kind of guardian farm dogs, and there's no people around. And it was really scary to like call for help and know that no one is going to come and help you. And yeah, I feel like they bring out this like feral, awful version of me too, because all of a sudden you click into survival mode and you think like, what would I do to live right now? And yeah, those are not always nice thoughts. So dogs are definitely a fear. I didn't actually find them bad on the course, which was a relief. In the Okanagan Valley where I live, we do have a lot of black bears, not so many grizzlies. You have to travel a little further away, and I've mostly had non-issues with black bears. There was a time where my partner and James and I were hiking up a mountain bike trail, and we saw one, and I think it was a juvenile, maybe 2 years old or something, and it just started walking towards us out of curiosity, and it didn't stop. And, we did all the things, we made ourselves big, we yelled, and it just kind of kept cruising towards us at a very relaxed pace. And we actually fired the bear spray. It was my only time discharging bear spray, and then turned around and just, came back the way we came. So yeah, that was a bit unsettling, but the bear wasn't charging us at anything. I don't know. Maybe it wanted to come over and say hi. And I've definitely worried about being followed by humans, but I haven't had that experience myself. And I do pick places to sleep where I feel pretty safe, kind of quieter spots. I don't, I try not to camp where I'm going to be interrupted. But yeah, I do think that my biggest fear are dogs. And we were given a bit of a primer on how to deal with them in the pre-race briefing. Get off your bike, let them know that you're human.
Yeah.
So I kind of just talked to them a bit. But when you have 1 or 2 dogs that are being aggressive, that's a little scary. But when you're severely outnumbered and they're circling you, it's really scary, right? Like when they're kind of on all sides of you. So I'm not quite sure what to do in those situations as well. At home, I often have bear spray, and I didn't have that here in Greece. And like I said, it wasn't an issue on the race, which was good.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad to hear that you came out safe. I can imagine I have the same experience biking around here in the South, though I've never had an experience with a pack of dogs. But I can't imagine how the adrenaline that fills your body when you're in a situation like that impacts your ability to continue to press on. Either you get a short burst of energy to escape and get yourself to survival, but then you kind of have to work through the consequences of that adrenaline introduction into your body too.
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
I have one other question here regarding, keeping yourself safe out on these ultras. And, you did partially address this about, choosing safe sleeping situations, but have you ever had any concerns about keeping your bike safe, or having your bike stolen, whether you're, at aid stations or running in for resupplies, or while you're sleeping? Do you have any tips or tricks for that?
Yeah. So most races I've done go through kind of smaller communities where it's not such an issue. Bike theft isn't such an issue. So in both Greece and Morocco, I brought a lock for when I was touring, but I didn't bring it when I was racing. And I didn't feel like I needed it at all when I was racing. I just trusted things would be fine. Yeah. So when I've been I guess I try and park places to sleep where I am not going to be bothered. But, if I was at maybe a busier campground or a place where I thought that someone might come by me, like a bus stop, I would try and sleep with the bike behind me, or maybe put my helmet around the front wheel and the frame so that at least if somebody goes to roll it away, it will make some noise and kind of alert me. Again, I haven't had an issue with that so far. When I do bring a lock, I have brought a lock for some events. I think I did for TCR because it does go through I rated it through some bigger cities. And I use like a hip lock, which is like a glorified zip tie. It really doesn't do much, but it also weighs like 20 grams or something like that. The trouble with me is that the one I used had a key, and like I lose things, guys. Like, I don't know if I've made that clear yet. So I put the key on like a piece of string with a whistle. So I kind of keep those two things around my neck at all times because I don't want to lose that stupid key. So maybe getting a combo one might work better. But yeah, I would say in general, I think the race, most of the races, it hasn't been a concern. And when I'm touring, I try and listen to my spidey senses and do what makes sense. So when I was staying in Kalambaka at the hotel, they asked that I leave the bike kind of in, behind the bar that wasn't being used as a bar near the reception. And I just felt like there's someone at the reception all the time. This is probably not going to be an issue. I don't want to make a big stink about bringing my bike to my room. Like, I can leave it here. It's fine. And I just didn't really think that was going to be an issue. When I was touring in Morocco, I think I was in Fez, and I was staying in a very very tight hotel just outside the Medina. I rolled in at like midnight because I had taken a bus there, and they asked that I put my bike outside and like lock it to a post. And I was just like, nope, hard no. I'm not leaving my bike outside on the street overnight. And it was really difficult to negotiate with the hotel staff. There wasn't room in the reception. It would be in the way in the restaurant. It didn't fit in my room. It was so small. So I took a wheel off and carried it up to the top floor where there was kind of a balcony, a rooftop balcony, and locked it to the balcony. And I felt like it was such a pain to get up there. It would be a real pain in the butt for someone to steal. And being out of sight from general street traffic on the balcony, I wasn't so worried about it. So like, I can be firm when I need to about the bike, but I also feel like in general, if hotel staff tell me it's safe, I usually believe them, but I wouldn't recommend leaving your bike on a street at night without you, like, anywhere.
That's really good advice. I mean, the more that I hear about these kinds of experiences, it sounds like it's just a series of trusting your gut, making a decision, and then a process of negotiation. So doing that over and over in a million different circumstances.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. So when I got to the CP3 and Milisorgi, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. It was one of those great mountain refuges, really good food again. And while I was waiting I think I had chicken and some fancy rice with some like cheese on it. It was so delicious. I changed my my front brake pads, I think it was. So they were just completely worn through after 13,000 meters of climbing. I guess I, had them on there for a few days when I was touring, but I wasn't doing a ton of elevation. So I think just all the mud and the grit. I was using organic brake pads, and I think they run through a bit quicker. So I replaced the front ones, but not the rear, because I was just, I get a bit too lazy. I had a little bit of a difficult time maybe pushing the calipers in, and I just didn't want to go through that process again with the rear brake pads. So I was hoping they would last for the rest of the course. So this was really the more remote section of the course, or the most remote section, and it felt like it. Definitely not the grease you're expecting. Just take a look at these mountains. Like, it was incredible. It was very difficult to not take a million photos. And I just had such joy riding through this section of terrain. And, I was fueled up from that meal. I had fresh brake pads, so I had better stopping power. There was some hiking, and I was just happy to be outside and do it. It's a pretty rocky course, and I did have one flat in this section. It wasn't that big of a deal though, it's always nice when you get a puncture and it's not a big deal. It was a bigger puncture. I tried to use one of my smaller bacon strips and it just like disappeared inside the tire. And so I grabbed a bigger one and plugged it, pumped the tire up, and yeah, it was fine from that point on. So everything worked as it should, the tire and the sealant and the bacon strip. So I was a little bit worried for, the next maybe 15 minutes that it would start leaking or it would get ripped out or something, but no issues. So that was a good thing. Wanted to talk a little bit about food. One of the fun parts about ultra cycling is being able to indulge in all of those things that your inner child wants to. So I have a lot of candy and chocolate bars and just kind of trashy food that I try to avoid in day-to-day life because the nutritional value is questionable. This on the one side of the screen, we have Giro from the shop across from CP3. On the other side of the screen, we have a peach frozen yogurt. Frozen treats are just the best. Ate a lot of 7-day croissants and sugary candy, a lot of cold drinks. Some granola bars and chocolate bars. I also ate some things that I wasn't fully in love with. So as I mentioned, the course has some more remote sections, and I stopped in the, evening of the third day to get some food to take with me into the night. I realized I was down, pretty low on my stashable stuff, and there was a restaurant, and I was kind of asking what I could get to go, and she said, "Oh, how about some macaroni?" I think she said this. She was speaking, in Greek, and I was like, "Yeah, that sounds great." And she brought out this this big takeaway container of spaghetti. And I was like, just plain spaghetti. And I like food with a lot of flavor. So I was a little disappointed to see it. And then she asked if I wanted to put ketchup on it. And I was like, well, I guess ketchup will make it a little bit better. So I doused it with ketchup and salt and pepper. And the woman at the restaurant, she was talking with a friend and they were speaking Greek. And I feel like, I don't know if she was saying this, but in my head, she was saying something like, these funny cyclists who order spaghetti with ketchup, what are they doing? This is such a dumb, tasteless thing to be eating. Why do they want to eat this? And here I am thinking the same thing, this is a really dumb thing to be eating. But I packed it around in my little packable backpack and ate half of it, before bed, and then the other half the next morning at some time. And it was actually really great, just full of carbs, easy to eat. The ketchup gave it a little bit of flavor. So I will actually probably go with plain spaghetti and ketchup in the future and salt and pepper. Yeah, it was one of those moments turned oh, actually, this is pretty much what I need right now.
I was thinking, I wonder if she had somebody else stop that turned down any actual food that they would have normally served there and was like, no, literally, I just want spaghetti with ketchup. And so she was like, oh, clearly every one of these ultra racers just wants spaghetti and ketchup. I already know what you need. I got you.
I totally think that's what happened. I think that's my theory. And, we're so impatient, right? And it's already probably cooked up. So I don't know if it's already cooked up, but it was really quick. So that's what I'm thinking. I asked for a sandwich as well. And I got this big chunk in tin foil, and I opened it up thinking it would be I don't know what, a meat and cheese sandwich. And it was a baguette cut into 3 pieces. And I was so disappointed. Again, you've been living off of bars and gels and things, and you're looking forward to some real food, and it's just white bread. So I think that was a little more disappointing to me than the spaghetti. Maybe if it had butter on it, I would have been a bit happier, but just plain bread.
A theme that you discussed during the Atlas Mountain Race as well, which is how much time do you dedicate to kind of correcting these disappointments rather than just shoving it in your face or in your pocket and just moving along because you have to keep moving. So, you could have spent the time to hunt down an alternate meal. And that, time is money.
Fully. Yeah. I think the answer is just not being finicky and getting on with it. And, the priority is having enough calories to fuel your body, not necessarily enjoying those calories. And, sometimes I have a really upset stomach, and I don't know why, but sometimes I get an upset stomach and I have a hard time eating at all. So just being hungry at all is a good thing, and, being able to keep eating. And that's what I try and remind myself while I'm shoveling in my plain bread. Day 4 is when I feel like my body started to let me down a bit. I didn't have the best bivvy. I slept by a dump truck for, I don't know why. I just chose to sleep next to a dump truck when there was a perfectly good bus stop 100 meters down the road. And I got a bit cold at night. I ended up hoping to sleep for 2 hours and getting up about an hour and a half into my sleep, and just, being really chilly and uncomfortable. So I got up, hopped on the bike, and started riding. And I had a difficult time keeping the momentum going this day. I feel like my legs just started to feel tapped out, which was completely reasonable based on all of the elevation that we'd been doing. I also realized at this point that I was, starting to pull ahead in my lead in the women's field. And I think I was probably around 15th overall. So I was struggling physically, but also feeling good about where I was in the standings, and really wanting to extend my lead in the women's field and try and crack that top 10 position. So, whenever I started to, get frustrated with my pace or my legs not working properly, I was like, don't focus on how you feel, Meaghan. Focus on trying to move ahead. Here's one of those beautiful bridges, and there's a 3.5 kilometer hike bike up to a paved road, and it's pretty steep and pretty slow, and there's a little bit of it that's kind of bushwhacky. And I don't know how long it took me. It felt like I was in the forest for a very long time, and being able to do a section like that, even when you're not feeling great physically, is really rewarding. Getting to the pavement and just being like, okay, tick that box, challenge is done. The next challenge was heading to CP3, and that was in Karpenisi. Of course, it wasn't straightforward. You had to go over a ski hill. So Nelson clearly, made an effort to make this route up and down and nothing in between. This was a paved climb to the ski hill, so it definitely was a bit easier. Parts of it were pretty pitchy. The views were, again, absolutely amazing. I was running pretty low on resupply at this point. I picked up somebody's dropped Mars bar on the trail, and I really enjoyed eating that on the climb. That was definitely one of my favorite finds. So I think there was something maybe in a town at the base of the ski hill, and I don't know, I didn't see it. I didn't stop. Plenty of water, but I was pretty low on food by the time I got over the climb and down into the checkpoint. I spent a bit of time at the checkpoint, getting some food, eating those gyros, chatting with the volunteers. I brought 2 power banks, and one of them actually broke. I feel like it probably got wet in the rain. Sometimes I'm sloppy with my zippers, and it stopped working on me. I've had really good experiences with the dynamo for charging, but because the profile was so steep up and down, it wasn't charging on the uphills, and the descents were just way too quick. So I wasn't able to charge as much from the dynamo as I wanted to. So I really had to take a bit of a longer stop at CP3 to charge everything up. The stretch to the finish is only 190 kilometers, but there's 6,300 meters of elevation. So I knew that would take some time. There was one marked resupply, but we were told at the pre-race briefing that it was going to be closed. So we weren't guaranteed any resupply or places to charge devices. So I knew that I needed to be self-sufficient between CP3 and the finish. So that meant doing a bigger resupply for food and making sure all my electronics were going to make it. It was actually really relaxing, not having to rush, because I knew that I just had to wait for everything to charge up adequately, which just takes time. So I really chilled out. When I left, it was quite hot in the afternoon, and I didn't realize how much things had heated up because I'd been on the ski hill at higher elevations. So it was, pretty reasonable temperatures. And I just really suffered in the heat. The route goes through some smaller villages, and the roads are straight up, these poured cement roads with grooves in them. And I took it very slowly. I took a photo of a tortoise because that, I think, represented me in this section of the course. And I rode over, I guess the last pass of the day was one called Diaselo Kalai Kudas. And it's this pass that goes over the mountain rather than around it. The photos look beautiful. This was the last thing I saw in the daylight. This little church, I think, here, and I was just going like really, really slowly. I ended up walking my bike. I was listening to an audiobook. It was a romance called Meet Me at the Lake. It's like a Canadian romance story, and I'd been listening to it for like a day and a half, and the main couple, they hadn't done it yet, and they finally hooked up on the climb. So I guess that is what entertained me in that section of the course. And I got to the top, and I was really excited to come down, and it was just so steep. My hands were hurting on the descent, my feet were hurting. I took a switchback kind of too sharp and just bailed off the bike. And then I had a little timeout and realized that, I'm not going to be able to push to the finish in one go. I really need to rest and recover a bit before I kind of make that final push. So I just feel like it was a lesson in patience for me. I kind of want to be that person who pushes through the final night and gets to the end triumphant and sleep deprived and haggard. And I can do all those things, except I need a little more sleep to do them.
Man, that is an incredible vision of you on your final day here. Someone's asking, there's so much climbing in bikepacking races. So other than romance novels, peaking on a big last push, what is your training strategy to be able to climb all day and recover quickly? It kind of sounds like you're saying, you may not always recover quickly. Part of
Yeah, so in my training, I worked with my coach, Peter McSherry, to introduce more high intensity intervals, more threshold and VO2 max. I feel like the kind of climbing profiles aren't, I don't want to say they're not my favorite, but they're not what I do best at. I do better on flatter profiles where I can put out consistent and stable power for long periods of time. I'm a 2-time 24-hour world time trial champion. The course is very flat. You just put out steady watts and try not to vary that and try to stay as aero as possible. So I think that's like my, where I really excel. So a course that's this climby it definitely was challenging for me to adjust my training. I try to do a harder workout and then take an easier day to let my body recover and adapt. Because if you're just always kind of hammering, you're digging yourself into this hole that isn't necessarily leading to improvements, even though it feels like you're doing challenging work. I worked out a bit at the gym and did the strength training that my physio prescribed. And that was more to kind of help with body alignment and postural stuff. One of the things she recommended was that I walked backwards on the treadmill. I don't exactly remember why, but I absolutely love doing that for my warm up for some reason. So that was an important part of my training. I think getting a lot of recovery in your training is really important. Trying to make sure you get good night's sleep, getting your protein recovery, getting your vitamins, just taking care of yourself so that you can build during that time. Because when you're racing, your body's just kind of getting torn down. So you really need to take care of it while you're training and, eat well and hydrate and do all those things. And then in the past, I've done some elevation challenges. And I think knowing that I can do big days of climbing helps when you're entering an event like this, being like, okay, this is like the time I Everested, we're just going up. I also learned from Everesting a few times that after, midday, everything starts to feel a lot more difficult, even at the same power. So what feels easy in the beginning will not feel easy in a few hours, in a few days. So if it feels hard in the beginning, if you feel like you're pushing, then you're probably going to have some negative repercussions later on. You're going to, have to really drop your power. You're going to blow out. You might pull something or injure yourself. So really kind of governing and pulling back on those first couple of days was definitely part of my strategy. I tried to stay in the saddle, but anytime I noticed I was breathing heavy or, really feeling like I was working, I tried to just like take it down a notch because I knew that that pace was not going to be sustainable. I use power in my training. I didn't bring a power meter on the race because I haven't had great luck with power meters in racing. They get out of calibration. They don't sync. I don't know. They discourage me because my power numbers get so low. So I consciously decided not to use any power meter or heart rate data on the race and just go off a feel. And I feel like I've been competing since 2017. I've got a pretty good idea of where I can, where I can be for a long period of time, and just kind of leaning into that and trusting it.
That's awesome insight. I'm surprised to hear you didn't use a power meter or heart rate monitor, but I do love that it's a core part of the experience, trusting yourself again. It's awesome.
So the last day was absolutely beautiful. A ton of climbing. I was pretty tired. I took a couple naps, but knowing that you're going to end up at the sea was quite motivating. It was a beautiful, clear day until it wasn't. So again, I had a hard time not stopping to take photos. When I got to the top, I think it was the Carpenisi, oh, I can't remember. There was kind of a little loop where we just accumulated a bunch of elevation, and it was a challenging climb. But once you got to the top, you're coming down the mountain. And I kept repeating this phrase, like coming down the mountain. And then I started singing the song, "She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes." And then I was, remembering my mom always singing that song to me when I was a kid. And I couldn't remember any of the lyrics, so I was making them up. And then I just started crying again because I was thinking, my mom is one of my biggest cheerleaders. And this song, I didn't realize how special it was to me, but I guess it must be. And I just kind of chanted it the whole way down, making up ridiculous verses and having a really great experience. And again, this is one of those, fatigued, happy, proud accumulation of things that come together and just make you tear up and cry a little bit. I had to change my other brake pad. I thought I would make it all the way down the mountain, but it definitely was not working anymore. And I'm not sure how well you can see, but they're pretty worn on the front ends there. So pulled over, made that little swap, and started rolling towards the finish. Some of the terrain near the end is actually pretty easy, kind of, rolling gravel roads. And I didn't take many photos because I was a woman on a mission. So this is the last picture I took before I got to Nefpaktos. But there's one final climb where you go up the top to these windmills. I think it's like over 1,000-meter climb. And it had been beautiful all day. And it started to get cloudy. And then I realized it was definitely going to storm on me. You kind of get that, you can feel the temperature and the humidity and everything is shifting. And it started raining on me when I was maybe 200 meters from the top of the climb. And I went to get my rain jacket and I couldn't find it. So I am pretty positive I left it where I had slept that night because I was using it kind of as a ground sheet to make it for the sleeping mat that I had lost. So I think there's a lesson there that problems can compound. So I didn't have my rain jacket. I layered up as best I could. And then it turned to hail. I pulled over, waited about 15 minutes, felt like the hail was stopping, figured I would make my push over the top, and then it just got like 10 times worse. So I came over the final summit just in this awful hailstorm. There was lightning in the distance, not overhead, thankfully. So I felt kind of safe in continuing. But it was pretty, pretty momentous way to finish. The road coming down was just, full of mud and kind of a river of water. And I kept thinking to myself, like, oh man, I really hope I don't have a mechanical here. I'm just going to have to run down the mountain because there's no shelter. It's very exposed. So I rolled into Nefpaktos, like a little drowned rat, feeling very proud of myself. And it was great to reach the sea. I finished in 4 days, 7 hours, 0 minutes, according to my brevet card, and got to celebrate with people who'd finished earlier. Anatole and the race winner were there. I'm totally blank. Alex was there, as well as a lot of other riders, volunteers, people who had DNF'd and made their way to the finish. So it was great hanging out with everyone. Miriam Golfman bought some food for me because I was like trying to figure out how to get changed and collect my bag and wash up. And he was like, you need to eat. And it had been over like 24 hours and I'd stopped for resupply. So I definitely needed some good food. So I, shout out to him for getting me some delicious food, Greek salad and chicken and an alpha beer. And I don't know, there was some other things in there too. And then I got to hang out in Factos and spend a few days, cheering other finishers as they arrived and chatting with folks and just relaxing by the beach and kind of celebrating this journey that we'd all been on together. I'll stop sharing my screen now.
What an epic finish. That sounds absolutely incredible. I know that you had said you had finished in a storm, but I didn't realize about, the lack of rain gear that you experienced. Oh my gosh. In our last chat, Meaghan, you had mentioned something that really stuck with me, which was this theme of purpose over performance. And in hearing today from you, I'm hearing so many themes of sort of this emotional connection, sentimentality, like reflection. And so, the theme that you had shared with me in February was something about really wanting to contribute to a dynamic and growing women's field. And, from the Atlas race, where you were the first chaser, so to speak, to Hellenic, in which you were the chased woman pretty much the entire time. But not only that, breaking the top 10 in this epic battle that came down to the last hours in this huge storm. It seems like you can absolutely and squarely say that you have met that goal. But I just love hearing about the ways that your story is evolving, not only to what you're contributing to this field, and to, the conversation about how important ultra women's cycling is, and what the world can learn from women like you and the adventures that you have, but also that kind of like personal relationship and the personal importance that these moments and these journeys and these, lessons teach you about yourself and remind you about your life and childhood. So I'm just feeling so tickled to be able to share that with you. And, before we sign off here, I have a really critical question to ask you from a listener, Kelton here. We absolutely need to know, what is your favorite way to eat a potato?
Fried, baked, chip form, hashed, browned, boiled, but not raw.
Oh, wow. So all of the above, except the raw. I'm pretty sure I saw a gyro filled with French fries in one of those slides.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. They just stuffed them in there, and I got a side of fries too. And so, and then I just doused it with mayonnaise and sauce and ketchup and salt and pepper. Potatoes are amazing fuel. And I love them in my day-to-day life as much as I love them in ultras.
Amazing. Well, unless there's anything else that you'd like to share with folks here, I just want to say I'm so stoked for you. I'm so proud of you. And thank you so much for taking the time to share with us about your journey.
Thank you so much for hosting this event. Thank you, Redshift Sports, for supporting me and everyone for tuning in. It's always great to see you, Taylor. And I just love all the insight you brought into to my story and the way you could help me share it with everyone else. So thank you for that.
Well, we'll be cheering you on and just can't wait to hear what the mountain races serve up next for you.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us.